Tech doesn't run on innovation. It runs on narrative. And Jonas Fletcher was a master of narrative. My name is Everett Monroe. I'm 38 years old, a software engineer by trade, a quiet builder by nature, and for the last 8 years, an invisible architect behind one of Silicon Valley's most overhyped AI startups. You've probably heard of it. Census AI. The revolutionary platform that uses machine learning to interpret customer feedback and predict retention trends with near-clairvoyant accuracy. It's been featured in Fast Company, demoed at South by Southwest, and hailed as the future of human-centric data. But my name's not on the founding papers. Because my best friend since 4th grade stole it from me. Jonas and I grew up in Missoula, Montana. We met in Mrs. Langston's homeroom when he copied my vocabulary test and asked me afterward what sagacious meant. He was loud, charming, relentlessly optimistic, everything I wasn't. He didn't earn people's trust. He assumed it like it was already his. In college we shared a dorm at Carnegie Mellon. I studied machine learning. He majored in communications, which I always suspected was code for well-dressed improvisation. We moved to San Francisco in 2012 with a Craigslist lease and $3,000 in combined savings. I took a job tutoring high school math to keep the lights on. He started hanging around startup events in Soma, wearing blazers with frayed elbows and telling anyone who'd listen that he was working on something big. The truth was, we were. Census AI was born out of a late-night conversation at our kitchen table, over bad takeout and unpaid bills. I was frustrated by how many small businesses drowned in feedback data, thousands of survey responses, customer complaints, review site rants, without the tools or time to do anything with it. So I built a tool that could. The first version barely functioned. It miscategorized neutral reviews as hostile and once flagged great value for money as a threat phrase. But over time it got smarter. I fed it labeled datasets. Trained it. Retrained it. Jonas watched it evolve. He knew how powerful it could become. When he suggested we pitch it to investors, I agreed, on one condition: we do it together. He'd handle the meetings. I'd run the demo. Our first real pitch was with a boutique VC firm called Ellison Gray Capital. I wore my one decent button-down shirt. Jonas showed up with a slide deck so polished it looked like it had been stolen from a TED Talk. The meeting went well. I walked them through the back-end architecture. They nodded, asked smart questions, took notes. When we left, Jonas slapped my shoulder. They loved it, he said. Told you. A week later he told me they wanted a second meeting. But this time he'd go solo. They just want to focus on fundraising strategy, he said. You'll come in later. Once it's real. I didn't love it, but I trusted him. He was my best friend. He went to the meeting. Then another. Then another. I kept coding, kept refining the product, kept believing we were in this together. Until the incorporation papers came through. Census AI Incorporated. Filed under one name. Jonas Fletcher. Sole founder. He handed me a check the next day for $12,000. For your time, he said, like I was a temp who helped move furniture, not the guy who had built the entire platform from scratch. That night, I sat alone in our apartment, staring at the check, my laptop open beside me, the Census AI codebase still glowing in dark mode. Jonas had stolen everything but left behind one thing. My silence. I didn't cash the check. I didn't confront him. I got to work. And he had no idea what I was about to build next. Jonas moved out 3 weeks later. He told me it was about space, that we both needed room to grow. But his new loft in the Mission had been paid for with Ellison Gray's seed money, and the company Amex was suddenly footing his Uber rides and oat milk lattes. Census AI launched in private beta 4 months after the seed round. The version they showcased had my original core logic running underneath layers of rebranded fluff and a glossy UI built by some freelance agency. It wasn't better, just prettier. Jonas gave a keynote at a startup accelerator summit in Santa Clara. I watched from my apartment, live-streamed on my cracked iPad, as he stood under a blue spotlight and talked about his vision. My language. My architecture. Not a word about where it came from. He said, I built this to help people understand their customers better. I nearly laughed. He hadn't built a damn thing. That was the moment something shifted inside me, not anger, not even grief. Just precision. I wasn't going to fight Jonas with tweets or lawsuits or exposés. I was going to outbuild him. I started freelancing again. Quietly. Under the radar. I used a different name, E. Monroe Consulting, and took on projects no one wanted. Niche data analytics for old retail chains. Legacy system integration for law firms that barely understood email. I did it all. Nights, weekends, early mornings. I was saving. Learning. listening. Most importantly, I was watching Jonas. By year 2, Census AI had raised a Series A and opened an office downtown. Their client list included 3 big-name restaurant groups, a major hotel chain, and 1 national pharmacy brand. I knew this because I read every line of every trade article they fed to TechCrunch and VentureBeat. But I also read the things they didn't print. The CTO they brought in left after 6 months. The VP of engineering quit quietly and went to Stripe. One investor stepped down from the board without explanation. I knew why. The platform didn't scale. It wasn't built to. Jonas had taken something handcrafted and tried to stretch it like cheap plastic. And it was starting to crack. The tipping point came when I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Marla Jensen. She'd been an operations exec at that boutique VC firm that funded Census AI back at the beginning. She'd always liked me, thought I was too smart to be behind the curtain. We met for coffee in Hayes Valley. She was sharper than I remembered, tired eyes, flawless blazer, no time for small talk. I heard about what happened, she said. I'm not surprised, I replied. She nodded once as if confirming her suspicions. He's pitching a Series B. Numbers don't add up. Retention's dropping. Half the clients don't even understand the platform anymore. And what does that have to do with me? I asked. You built it, didn't you? I didn't answer. She smiled. Thought so. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts, client feedback, investor concerns, technical performance reports. You ever think about starting over? She asked. Every day. Marla leaned forward. Because if you ever want to build what this was supposed to be, I know people who'd fund that. I walked out of that cafe with a folder full of ammunition and a decision already made. The revenge wouldn't come in one blow. It would come piece by piece. Code line by line. And Jonas? He wouldn't even see it coming. I didn't start a company right away. That would have been too obvious. Too loud. And Jonas was still too famous. Instead, I built something nobody saw coming. It started with a prototype, a stripped-down version of Census AI. Same core concept but faster. Smarter. Modular. I wrote the whole thing in 6 weeks, fueled by old resentment and strong coffee. Then I reached out to the people Jonas forgot. Clients who had signed with Census AI early, hoping for insight and value, and were now buried under bloated dashboards and cryptic reports. I knew what they needed because I built the original system. I knew where Jonas had overpromised, where his new devs had patched over flaws with features nobody asked for. I cold emailed them under a new brand. Ghostline Systems. No flashy website. No hype. Just a message. You've been promised insight. I deliver clarity. No retainer. No risk. Just results. 3 replied. Then 7. Then 16. I wasn't selling a product. I was solving pain. And clients remember who solves their pain. Meanwhile, Census AI started showing signs of rot. Quiet signs. I watched from the sidelines as they launched features nobody used, redesigned the UI twice in 6 months, and opened a Berlin office for reasons no one could explain. Then came the layoffs. 20 people. Mostly engineers. Spun publicly as a strategic pivot. But I knew better. I knew what it meant when a startup started downsizing while burning investor capital. They weren't pivoting. They were bleeding. Jonas was still on the speaking circuit, of course. Still doing his visionary founder routine, still wearing expensive sneakers and quoting Steve Jobs like scripture. But his edges were starting to show. One of my early Ghostline clients sent me a link to a leaked Zoom recording. Jonas, mid-meeting, snapping at his own dev team because the client churn rate had doubled. I don't care how it works, he shouted. Make it work better. I watched that clip 3 times. Not for the content, just for the sound of panic in his voice. It was the first time I'd ever heard him lose control. And that's when I knew he could be broken. But I wasn't done building yet. Ghostline was just the first act. The second would be public. Visible. Loud enough to reach Jonas where it hurt most. His legacy. So I called Marla. Told her I was ready. She didn't ask what I meant. She just said, let's talk strategy. Marla set the first meeting for a Thursday morning in a private office on the 19th floor of a glass and steel tower in downtown San Francisco. There were no logos on the walls, no signs on the door. Just a sleek conference table, 2 silent assistants, and 3 investors I'd never met but recognized immediately. One had been on the founding board of Square. Another helped scale Snowflake. The third, well, he just nodded once and said, we've heard a lot about you, Everett. I didn't pitch them a product. I told them a story. About a system built to empower small businesses. about a friend who turned that system into a monolith, and about a market full of clients who no longer trusted what they'd been sold. Then I showed them Ghostline. Not the messy, early version I'd slapped together in solitude. This was clean, sharp, rebuilt from the ground up over the past few months with 2 contract engineers and a UX designer I found on an obscure Slack channel. It ran faster. It read cleaner. And most importantly, it delivered answers, not just analytics. They didn't speak for almost a full minute after the demo ended. Then the guy from Snowflake leaned forward. "What do you need?" I told them. "I need a war chest. Not millions for branding or ballooning a headcount. I needed just enough capital to hire a small elite team, lock down key clients, and keep us out of the headlines, for now." "Stealth mode?" one of them asked. "No," I said. "Shadow mode." Marla smiled. She got it. I wasn't trying to disrupt Census AI. I was going to hollow it out from the inside. By the end of that week, I had my first term sheet. By the next week, I had a name. Halyard. A nod to something old world. The rope that hoists the sail, but also, quietly, the thing holding everything in place. Halyard wasn't just a company. It was a surgical strike. We built under the radar. No LinkedIn posts. No launch parties. No website splash screens promising to change the world. Just me, 5 engineers, and a short list of clients who'd left Census AI quietly and signed on with us just as quietly. Within 60 days, we were managing data for 7 mid-sized retail groups, 2 national restaurant chains, and 1 Fortune 500 company I still can't name publicly. We were inside his territory now, taking ground he didn't know he'd already lost. Then one morning, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Not Marla. Not a client. Jonas. He left a voicemail. "Everett, call me back, man. We need to talk." He sounded casual, but his voice cracked on the last syllable. That's when I knew the rumors had reached him. But he didn't know how far they'd already spread. And I wasn't planning to tell him. I didn't call Jonas back. I let him stew. Because the worst thing you can do to a man like Jonas Fletcher isn't attack him. It's make him irrelevant. And that's exactly what was happening. By Q2 we had 15 clients. Quiet, committed, bleeding out of Census AI's client roster one by one. None of them announced their departure publicly. They just stopped logging into his dashboard and started wiring money to mine. We weren't sexy. We were reliable. Jonas's PR machine couldn't spin around that. You can't tweak your way through a disappearing pipeline. But he tried. A series of breathless posts appeared on his feed, words like hyper-personalized AI, enterprise NLP, next-gen predictive modeling. He talked about big contracts in development, strategic coastal expansions, and a confidential partner in the automotive sector. All noise. All bluff. Because I'd already signed that automotive client 2 weeks earlier. Jonas must have felt it. Like watching cracks form across glass, but not knowing where they'd come from. I wasn't just poaching clients. I was reintroducing myself. One of my engineers, Marcus ex Palantir, brilliant and impossible to intimidate, sent me a link to an internal job board Census AI used for recruiting. They were trying to hire a founding CTO 2.0. It was in the title. No subtlety. Which meant Jonas was trying to rewrite the past again. He didn't want to fix the engine. He wanted someone to pretend the engine had always worked. We printed the job posting out, pinned it to the break room wall, and crossed out 2.0 with red marker. Someone scribbled underneath. Should have kept 1.0. That week, Halyard closed a deal with a data security firm that serviced 3 major e-commerce platforms. It wasn't just a contract. It was leverage. Because that firm also handled infrastructure for one of Jonas's biggest clients. 3 days after we signed, Jonas sent me another message. This time via email. "I don't know what you're doing, Everett. But let's talk before this gets stupid." I didn't answer. Not out of pettiness. Out of principle. He thought this was still about a grudge. He hadn't realized this was a correction. That afternoon I walked into our new office. Our first real space, not just borrowed desks and coffee shops. No neon signs. No kombucha taps. Just steel, glass, and a single name on the door. Halyard. One of our interns asked if we were finally going to go public. Make a splash. I smiled. No. We're going to let him do that for us. Because Jonas was about to panic. And when men like Jonas panic, they talk. Loudly. And publicly. All I had to do was wait. It started on a Wednesday. Jonas gave a keynote at a minor tech summit in San Diego. One of those investor-heavy events where founders strut like show dogs and every sentence ends in a pitch. He looked tired. Paler than usual. Collar askew. He opened with a joke about burnout that didn't land, then launched into a manic demo of Census AI's next-gen adaptive dashboard. Only, the demo crashed. Mid-presentation. What? On screen. In front of 500 people and a live-stream audience. I watched it from our office with the rest of my team. No commentary. No laughter. Just silence and the occasional sharp exhale. When the screen froze, Jonas stared at it too long. Not with frustration. With fear. Because he didn't know how to fix it. He'd never known. 20 minutes later, the video was clipped and on Twitter. Tech bloggers started sniffing. One called it a microcosm of Census AI's larger identity crisis. Another posted a screenshot with the caption, "You can't pivot around broken trust." By Thursday, a former client of his posted an unflattering review of the platform on LinkedIn. By Friday, 3 more followed. Each one tagged Halyard. I hadn't asked for that. But I wasn't going to apologize for it either. Jonas called me that afternoon. I didn't answer. He tried again. Then again. Left a message. "We need to meet. Everett, please. I'm serious. This is spiraling." He was right. It was spiraling. But not for me. That weekend, I flew to New York to meet with an investment group Jonas had pitched during his Series B fundraising blitz. Marla set it up. They told me they'd pulled out of his round. Too much noise, one of them said. Not enough product. They offered me a term sheet before my espresso arrived. When I got back to San Francisco, one of Jonas's senior engineers, Talia, someone I'd mentored years ago, sent me a message. He's blaming the team. Demanding we reverse engineer whatever you're building. You hiring? I brought her in the following week. No fanfare. No job posting. She walked in, looked around our office and said, "This feels like what we were building before he ruined it." That was the moment I realized something had shifted permanently. We weren't just fixing what Jonas broke. We were becoming what Census AI pretended to be. And Jonas? He was still shouting into the noise, trying to control a story he no longer owned. All I'd done was tell the truth. One contract at a time. The meeting wasn't my idea. It was Marla's. "He's circling the drain," she said. "And he wants to meet. Take it. It's time." We agreed on neutral ground, a glass-walled co-working space in Soma where neither of us had history. Jonas showed up late. Of course he did. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, he was still tall, still stylish, still wearing some overpriced jacket that tried too hard. But the confidence was gone. The polish had dulled. He walked into the room like a man hoping to rewrite the script halfway through the third act. "Everett," he said, sitting across from me like we were still friends. I didn't speak. He filled the silence. "I'll start. What's happening? It's gotten way out of hand." I folded my hands calmly. "You mean the client's leaving?" He flinched. "This isn't good for either of us." "I'm doing just fine," I said. He laughed, thin and humorless. "Come on. You've made your point. You're mad, okay? I get it. I should have handled things differently. You stole a company," I said flatly. "You stole my company. And you lied about it. For years." He shook his head, exasperated. "I didn't steal it. I built it." "No," I said. "I built it. You performed it. There's a difference." He leaned forward, dropping the performance. "You want a seat at the table? Fine. Let's merge. Bring Halyard under the Census umbrella. You can come in as CTO partner. Hell, you can run product. Just stop this." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I smiled. Not with joy. With clarity. "We're not merging," I said. "You're dissolving." He froze. "By the end of next quarter, you'll have lost 60% of your revenue. Your investors are pulling out. Your engineers are leaving. Your platform doesn't scale. And your name," I added, "is becoming synonymous with failure." Jonas looked like he wanted to scream but couldn't. He had no words left. I stood. "You thought you were fighting me. But you've been fighting your own reputation." I just gave it a nudge. He didn't follow me out. As I walked down the hallway past young founders and glass pods pitching ideas louder than they believed in them, I realized something. Jonas wasn't the villain anymore. He was the warning. And I had work to do. 2 months later, Census AI filed a notice of restructuring. The headline didn't say, "Collapse." It said, "Pivot." Because ego doesn't go bankrupt, it rebrands. Jonas stepped down as CEO, citing mental health and new ventures. Investors pulled out quietly. His PR team went dark. The Twitter account hasn't posted since. And me? I was in the new Halyard office, watching the sunrise through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. We just crossed 100 clients. 37 full-time employees. 3 offices. No press releases. No keynotes. No TED Talks. Just impact. We'd become what Census AI pretended to be, a company that listened before it predicted, that solved before it scaled. One morning I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. It was a photo. Jonas and I, age 22, sitting on the roof of our old San Francisco apartment. A whiteboard between us. Empty coffee cups. Marker stains on our jeans. Smiling like idiots. On the back, a single sentence. We were almost something great. I stared at that photo for a long time. We were something great. He just thought it had to be about him. I slipped the photo into a drawer. Some stories don't need to be published. Some victories are quieter than applause. And sometimes the real revenge isn't destruction, just building something better and signing your own name on the door.